This is episode 53 of the Andrew Hines Real Estate Investing Podcast. Hello and welcome to episode 53 of the Andrew Hines Real Estate Investing Podcast. Today I have a very special guest, one of my original real estate mentors and good friend of mine, Carlo Sorrenti, on the show to talk about his journey in real estate, his focus on student rentals and high-end assets, which is a model that I've taken in my business. I've learned a lot from him and a couple of my other mentors, and they really have contributed to the level that I'm at today. So I'm extremely grateful for that. I'm extremely grateful that Carlo decided that he was willing to come on the show and share some of his thoughts, which are extremely valuable. Carlo's a very aggressive business person, and by working with him over the years, I learned how to implement some of that into my business. Of course, doing it my own way, and that's what everyone has to do. You always have to take these interviews with a grain of salt and see how you can implement what you're learning into your own business, your own life, and your own personality so that it all jives. But you're going to love this episode. He talks about how he's amassed a $20 million portfolio, which is not small. He's always aggressively moving, finding deals, and pulling off some of the coolest moves that I've ever seen. Again, I know you're really going to enjoy it. Some quick housekeeping before we get into it. Of course, we've got the Greater Hamilton REI meetup coming up on February 27th, 7 p.m. here in Burlington. So if you are not already in our private group, the link to that group is in the show notes for this episode. If you're having any trouble at all, please just reach out to me at the Andrew Hines on Instagram or Facebook, and my last name is spelled Hines, and I'll be happy to send you the link from there if needed. I also wanted to make a special request. If you have not already done so, please make sure you're subscribed to this podcast on whatever platform you're listening on. If it's iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, Stitcher, Castbox, wherever it is you listen, please just make sure you subscribe. And if you're willing, I'd absolutely appreciate it if you'd be willing to leave a review on iTunes for this podcast. It really just helps it rank better, and it will help the podcast get out there so that it can help more people. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and please enjoy episode 53 with Carlo Sorrenti. Hello and welcome to the Andrew Hines Real Estate Investing Podcast. I have one of the titans of real estate in London, Ontario that flies under the radar, and probably the only interview that's going to be out there, I would think. I'm hoping. So Carlo Sorrenti. Carlo, thank you for coming on.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Titan, Andrew. You're really flattering me here.
Yeah, got to butter you up. Anyways, I know when we first talked about this, wasn't completely sure it'd be your thing. I know you do like to fly under the radar, and maybe we can get into all that. But I also know that you've been incredibly helpful to me. So for those who don't know, I've talked about you tons of times, sometimes by name, as somebody who's helped me a lot in this game, and we've always shared stuff. And why don't you just tell our listeners and viewers a little bit about yourself and when you got into real estate?
Yeah, and we have always shared stuff, and you've also been a tremendous help. So I've always really appreciated that. And this is going to be great just to chat and catch up. And so thanks for having me here. So
yeah, my pleasure.
We'll just kind of start, I guess, where I went to university. As you know, we both kind of went to Ivy, the business school. And regarding real estate, I dabbled in real estate before that, but I didn't make that sort of full-blown conscious decision to get into, the path to financial independence till a little bit later. So graduated and was, I guess, recruited would be the best way to put it, for a job in Toronto. And at that point, I thought I already had in my mind that I wanted to sort of take this path onto financial independence with real estate. So I thought to myself, what's the worst that can happen here? I go to Toronto, I take this job, it'll be a good experience, and perhaps it'll even revalidate and confirm for me that I don't want to be in that position, in that corporate world, working 9 to 5. And in fact, I do want to just take the path to financial independence. So that's exactly what happened. Took that job, and just for about, I think, 1 or 2 months, it's funny because you hear stories sometimes of people, like they have these traumatic events and they get to a really low point in their life, and that's what forces them to just say, I'm done with this. I really want to take control. But for me, it was actually a pretty good scenario. Like I had a good job, I was with good people, a good wage, good income, but I just didn't see myself, going down that 9 to 5 path. It just wasn't for me. And I already kind of knew that, but it only, like I said, I was in that position for maybe 1 or 2 months. And then I'm like, you know what? This is not what I want to do. So came back to London. This would have been around late 2009. Came back to London. I got my real estate license, which for me has been a huge help. A lot of investors will say, no, I'm an investor. I don't want to get my real estate license. And you don't have to. But for me specifically, as we'll kind of see as the discussion unfolds, with the avenues that I took, it was a huge help. So primarily I got that because I wanted to really familiarize myself with the market. And you have a lot more access to information, to sales, and also just listings quicker. You see them a couple days before they hit MLS. So I got my real estate license late 2009. 2010 would have been my first full year as a realtor. And back in Toronto, when I had that job, I had already made that decision. I really want to take this path to financial independence through real estate. And for me personally, it wasn't necessarily just about the money. I just didn't enjoy being in that 9-to-5 job. You can easily project that out, 9 to 5 every single day till you're 65. And you know what I mean? You grab a pension.
Well, I know we've done like back of the envelope numbers so many times. It just like, what's the conventional path, even in the realtor business, what's the conventional path versus being an investor, right? Like you always struck me as the kind of guy that makes it really simple. Like the numbers are really simple. They make sense or they don't. And when you're in the 9-to-5 business, there is no financial independence in that.
Absolutely. I know that now it's like, especially with the advent of YouTube and all the social media, it's like more commonplace to say, oh, I'm not going to trade my time for money. But I thought that way since I was like 15, right? So I've always sort of had that mentality. So anyways, getting back to the story here, I got my real estate license. This would have been late 2009. And I knew in my mind that I really just had to put in a good year or two doing that to familiarize myself really, really nicely with the London, Ontario market, really become an expert and have that knowledge. But then B, as we all know, just to sort of have at least a year or two of income to show the bank and get some mortgages. So I would say 2010, 2011, I was acquiring probably 3 or 4 per year, which is pretty aggressive. But very quickly, like a lot of real estate investors, I got to the point where I was getting a lot of pushback from the bank.
Yeah, so that's quick growth, right?
Yeah, so I was pretty aggressive. I've always been that way. So then 2013, in London specifically, and this model can work in any city, I would assume, I noticed a really good opportunity to flip homes. So again, my number one sort of passion, if you will, is to hold, because that's ultimately what's going to provide you with the long-term freedom and whatnot, which for me is extremely important. Just giving you the freedom to do whatever you want to do in life. That's sort of my end goal and what keeps me passionate about what I do. But nonetheless, in 2013, I started a separate corporation, as you know, just to flip homes. And I thought that would be a great way to expand my knowledge base, which it did exponentially, but also to generate some income for these down payments, right? Because like all investors, you just hit a wall. Unless you're doing the perfect so-called BRRRRs, which I was back then. I was doing all the perfect BRRRRs, which is why I was able to buy so aggressively. But you still hit a wall with the bank in terms of financing and whatnot.
And sometimes you might be putting in a little bit. I know you've had various structures that you've done things with, whether you had a partner or whether or not. So every deal's kind of custom.
Absolutely.
But you've done deals, if I'm not mistaken, you've done deals where you've pulled out hundreds of thousands of dollars of the bank's money. Not, you got all your money back.
Yeah, absolutely.
And one of the things that I learned from us working together is you control the process.
Totally.
So could you just tell me a little bit about how you've controlled the process? Everything from appraisers, lenders, contractors are another part of the game too. But you taught me a good lesson there, and I know we've kind of learned that and grew with that lesson together in a lot of ways.
Well, that's a really good question, and it just comes down to your whole motivation for wanting to go down this path is to have that control. You can control whether you succeed or fail. You can control your destiny, so to speak. But when it comes down to the nitty gritty, when it comes to an appraiser, I mean, if they're not favorable, I just simply don't allow them in my house. I mean, that's a good example, right? You just don't allow them in my house.
Mind blowing to me the first time I heard that, and there's so many conversations we've had where I'm just like, all I could do is laugh. That's ballsy, which, that's been a big part of your success from my standpoint, is that you have been ballsy. But with the appraisers,
so I've been told.
So many people are just like, well, it's the appraiser, whatever they say, well, hopefully they give me a good appraisal here. What are some of the tangible things, if you do get a new appraiser that seems open to discussion? What are some of the tangible things you'll do to help you improve your odds?
Well, what I'll do, and this is what I would recommend any real estate investor do at any stage of the game, whether they're a novice or moving up in the ranks, advanced or a master, is, like I said, the main reason I got my real estate license is to really study that market knowledge. So what you can do is, if you're in a specific market like London or Burlington, and even within London, or any city, there are so many sub-markets. Like there might be Old East Village or, West London or North London. Keep a database, keep a spreadsheet of sales. And if you're really making this choice to go down this path and, earn financial independence through real estate, you have to be the expert, not the appraiser. They might do that as a career, to earn a wage, but this should be your passion, right? This should be your life. You need to have that knowledge first and foremost over any appraiser, because this is what you're doing with your life, with your career. This is your livelihood. So I would say keep a spreadsheet. And
in other words, you have comparables that you're showing to the appraiser.
Comparables. And in my case specifically, and I know you've dabbled in some flips in London as well, it's immensely important because a lot of these transactions are sold off MLS. So there really only is 2 or 3 appraisers that are privy to these sales who are actually doing the appraisals. So in that case, it's vitally important that if you have a new appraiser, you can just not let them in your house, but B, you could let them in and just, work with them or have a quick chat beforehand and say, look, here's the deal. This is a sale price. I'm going to show you some comps. They're not really going to be on MLS. If you can get behind that, we'll meet. Otherwise, I'm just going to go with a different appraiser. You tell me, type of thing, whatever. Or
and you've had people back out on that, say, no, it's not for me, or I won't.
Well, personally, I just don't let them in. I don't have that discussion. I don't even have that discussion.
Oh, you don't?
I just don't let them in. I don't.
And how does that work? So you see a name come up you don't recognize, generally speaking, now you're kind of at the point where you want the correct appraiser.
Right.
The one that that's appraised all the other comps, so they already know the value.
Absolutely.
You want that person.
Yeah. So I'll just call the lender, mortgage broker, or whatnot, and say, I'm not letting this appraiser in my house. Sometimes they can request an appraisal, sometimes they can't. So if it's random, you just keep going until someone else comes. And it's a little tricky starting out because you may need a sale. You may need that sale. I'm not in that position anymore.
Because there's enough comps on the market. Now it's about relating to the last one and showing, well, hey, mine's got quartz countertops and that one only had laminate. And there
absolutely.
you go. That's our extra. Or that one, mine has an extra bathroom and the other one didn't.
Yeah. So, just to sum up all of that, it's important to really have that market knowledge and be the expert at what you're doing. Yeah.
Yeah, huge thing. Just an absolutely huge takeaway. I also got that from the mortgage business. Being in this business is you can't assume that other people are good at their jobs.
Absolutely.
And I know that, I don't mean to put anyone down, but
never.
At the end of the day, you have to assume that it's your responsibility to take control of that process.
Absolutely.
Makes it harder sometimes to scale, right? But once you have your system in place and even your lender, I know we've both encountered some lenders that seem to have a knack for picking the appraiser, which, then you eliminate some of that problem.
Yeah,
because you just, you're going to get the guy that already knows these values.
That's always nice.
Yeah. And then that helps for the perfect BRRRR because then it becomes less of a gamble, which I think for a lot of people, they're gambling.
Well, also in a BRRRR situation, it's you can really take your time with that appraisal because you still own the property. In a sale, it's especially if the buyer's a novice investor or whatnot, or a novice buyer, if you try and relay this information to them either directly or second-handedly through realtors, sometimes it can get lost in translation, and a buyer, it might be hard for them to understand, hey, it's not appraising at this price. But if you're doing a BRRRR, it's you're not coming in, period.
Are you finding that you'll have a deal happen where it's a sale and the appraiser doesn't support it? Because that I haven't personally experienced.
I haven't had it where they don't support the price, the purchase price, but I've had it where they don't support the market rent that we're actually getting, which nowadays, as you know, many viewers will know, it's going to affect your loan to value. So that might be enough for a buyer to walk away.
Yeah. So for those who aren't familiar with that problem, a lot of our banks on the residential side and the commercial side, they do a debt coverage ratio and they look at your income and expenses, but they don't take your actual income. Especially when we're doing student rentals, they're looking at fair market rent for a family rental, but we both know student rentals get more.
Oh, absolutely.
And that's a challenge that I've had in the student rental game. There are ways around it, but and I know you've found some of those with alternative lenders as well, ways around that. Okay, so that kind of covers that part of the conversation, I think, just to kind of get an idea of how you're controlling the process. Sure. Is there other stuff that, just while we're on the topic of, things you've kind of taken the reins on where you've noticed it really benefits that you get involved with that portion of the process?
Yeah. So I've always kind of been a leader type and really good at delegating things. Having said that, it still is important to have a working knowledge of everything. So it may do an investor well to, if they are getting into flipping, let's say, which has been a big part of my business since 2013, it may suit them well to take the reins on being sort of that general contractor role to start out with, at least, to familiarize yourself with the process and essentially make it so that contractors can't take advantage of you or anything like that. So that could be a huge tip in the flipping area. As far as just, other areas mortgage wise, it helps to be in control as much as possible. But at the same time, you also have to be growing and evolving. You can't just make that your sole focus, right? Otherwise you can get so wrapped up in it that you're not going to sleep at night, right? I've always thought it was important to have that balance in life.
Yeah, and I respect that a lot about what you do, because it definitely seems like you have the balance now. I know you've had your years of working really hard, but I don't think you actually had to work quite as hard as some of the others. You were the work smart kind of guy.
Thanks, Andrew. I appreciate that. Flattering me too much here.
Well, yeah, I mean, one of the conversations we had early on, and one of the reasons that I never used a general contractor was because of those conversations we had.
Right.
And yeah, I contracted my own people, and that's why I ended up getting into the business of doing some general contracting. Which, if I'm not mistaken, you still don't use a general contractor.
No.
You still hire out individual trades to do every job and every project you do.
Yeah. However, that's not to say I'm on site or spend any time on site. I mean, it works like a clock.
Yeah, you have people who are helping you.
Absolutely.
And they're running the site for you. You're really just the one writing the checks and making sure that you're getting good prices.
Absolutely.
And getting it done, I think.
Writing the checks.
Writing the checks, yeah. That's the best job to have, I think, sometimes. And collecting them.
Collecting them's nice too.
Collecting them's kind of better.
Yeah, the first of the month is nice.
Yeah, I always enjoy that. So for context, since you brought that up, let's give people a little bit of context of what your portfolio looks right now, doors, value. Okay. Tell us a little bit.
Yeah, I've never been a big fan of describing it in doors because you're not really comparing apples to apples.
And you're doing premium real estate, which
I know. For instance, I have one door that's an 8-bedroom student rental. It's worth in excess of $1 million. Just that one door. But you could have a guy with 100 doors worth, or 10 doors, let's say, worth $100,000 each door, 10 headaches, 10 problems, and it's the same value. So I would say the overall value is somewhere around 20 million bucks of my overall portfolio that I'm holding. And there might be about a 50 to 60% loan to value on that.
So there's some pretty solid equity in that portfolio. We're talking $20 million value, approximately maybe $8 to $10 million in equity across that portfolio.
It's not bad. Getting warmed up.
Just getting warmed up. For a guy who started first property, I think you have one right near where I have one, over on the East End.
Yes.
And I think that was one of your first, right?
That was kind of one of the first ones that I dabbled in. But again, to put this in more context, I really didn't make that conscious choice until I would say around late 2009, early 2010. So about 10 years or so.
10 years in the biz. And so that you were around what, like 24, I think?
Yeah, it's 24, 25. So when I came back from Toronto, to put it into context a bit more, I literally had debts. I had nothing. and I was living in my grandfather's basement. So from then till now, it's been quite an evolution.
Yeah. You didn't live in the basement very long though.
No.
No, you had a really good first full year in real estate.
Yeah,
too.
it was pretty good. I knew I had to, put in that hustle and time. And all the while, like I said, I was so passionate about it because I was learning about the path and direction that I actually wanted to take for myself. So I was getting all that market knowledge.
Why go to business school then? I asked myself why I went to.
Yeah, I was going to put the question back on you. You know what? Growing up, I'm from London. So it's like Ivy Business School is like such a good school, and it's a great school. I have nothing bad to say about it. But I thought to myself, like, I always just wanted to get in, right? I wanted to get into Ivy. That would be like a great accomplishment. So I was in university and applied in my second year. I got in, and then I actually was asked by a professor to go to Belgium for a year, which is kind of off point. So I went, which was my third year, and then Ivy deferred the acceptance. So that was a great experience. Why I went is mainly because I knew it would be an enriching experience. Growing up, I was perhaps a little more on the introverted side. And I knew that going there and being involved in the participating and whatnot, it would really kind of break me out of that shell, and it did. And I also just thought for networking purposes, it's just a great school to go to, build great contacts. In fact, that's how you and I met.
Yeah, one of the alumni events.
Yeah, we went to an event, so the plan worked out, and here we are.
Yeah, how profitable that relationship has been for me, and I hope there's been some profit there for you too. That's, it's huge just from, going to an event. And I think the one cool thing is the level of thinking that you have to be able to do to get into that school.
Absolutely.
I saw that in you right away. Like, you just look at things a little more critically. In the business school kind of creates these little monsters because, some of them actually apply what they learn to their own lives and say, wait a minute, I don't want to work every day, and I don't want to work 100 hours a week, which several do.
Well, no doubt. And that's exactly what it did. And just going back on one point that you mentioned, the relationship has been reciprocal. And I've gotten so much value out of our relationship that, I'm blessed. I'm blessed to have known you in every single way. But
Thanks, man.
That's what it did. That's what the school did. It made me think really critically, even more so than I had in the past. And you come out sort of thinking in a different way. And of course, it's not all about thinking critically. Like I mentioned, you have to have that balance, in my opinion. But it helped in that regard. So
now what's balance to you? Like what's a typical day in the life of Carlo?
I have a pretty solid routine. So a big motivation for me why I wanted to take, the path to financial freedom was for freedom. It wasn't just for money. And I find that if people do it just for money, it's not quite enough of a motivator, because of course everyone's different and it doesn't have to end up this way, but it could be that they end up having a really unbalanced life, just chasing money, if that's their only motivation. But for me, the highest motive was freedom, to explore other things that you're passionate about. So for me, health and fitness is a passion. I like to stay fit, be healthy. So I have that freedom now to work out in the mornings. I don't have to go in at 8 or 9 o'clock. So I work out in the mornings. I have a pretty good routine, have lunch, maybe check in on sites, maybe not, go to the office, write some checks,
write a few checks,
as you said. But mainly I really love to hunt for deals.
Okay.
Like I've always really enjoyed hunting and just taking that action and being involved in the transaction, negotiating. So that part of the business is pretty thrilling for me.
Well, since you brought that up, let's talk about hunting for deals, because you have pulled off some of the most ridiculous deals that I've ever heard of. Always inspired. And to give credit where credit is due, I think that there's the average investor. And when I say average, I mean an advanced investor by most people's standards. And then there's what you do in the deal making side of your business has been really inspiring. So tell a little bit about how you find deals, how you negotiate deals, and maybe we'll do a case study afterwards.
Yeah. Keep flattering me here, Andrew. Sure you don't think I'm handsome?
Pretty good. Yeah, you got the muscle shirt on here, so he's showing it off.
Good stuff. Okay, so like I said, I've always been very aggressive when it comes to that, and that's gonna be either a personality trait someone has or they don't. It's not to say that you're doomed if you're not aggressive. You can work on that, and we may unfold some ways later on in this discussion. But I never liked the approach of just sending out so many letters and all these cold calls or what have you. And I know a lot of investors are going to cringe when they hear that. I mean, they spend a lot of time doing that. For me, that would have really detracted from me evolving and growing and focusing on other areas of real estate, like creating value in real estate. So I never really wanted to spend too much time hunting for deals. So I wanted to do it effectively. So I always thought, like, how can you do this effectively? So being a realtor helps. That's number one in my personal case, because you're just able to network with that many more agents, potentially bringing deals off the market. And I've gotten many deals that way.
So you're calling agents and putting bugs in ears pretty regularly?
Definitely putting bugs in ears. And also they just know that I like distressed, beat up properties. And oftentimes they know the areas that I like to buy in. So oftentimes they just come to me. And what I found is you always kind of have to put yourself in the other person's perspective and give them that sort of value. So I just tell realtors, like, look, you can double end it. If you bring me a good deal, you can have both sides of the commission. I mean, it's not really a concern for most realtors. I mean, no disrespect to them, but they're really scraping for funds.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's a huge help.
Yeah. Statistically, the odds of being successful as a realtor are very low, right? Most realtors are not making much money. So if you offer a double end deal, there's
huge.
some motivation there.
Yeah. So that's one.
Yeah.
And another one is, so I mentioned that I started this flipping business. And as you know, it's basically a very niche market focusing on student rentals. Mm-hmm. So because it's so niche, I would go directly to the university off-campus website housing and look at rental ads posted by owners and be like, hey, I'm not looking to rent, looking to buy. Are you interested in selling? Just very upfront. And, you know, usually you probably don't get a response, but sometimes you do. And usually, of course, they're going to be like, how much?
Yeah.
And for me, like right now, the level that I've gotten to, I don't even need to go and see the property. I can pull up the square footage online.
Yeah.
I can look at it on Google. I can maybe do a drive-by. I know a lot of people listening are going to be like, hey, what the heck's going on here? How can you make an offer without seeing a property? But I've gotten to that point, just knowing the various streets within London and the age of construction.
You'll know what it is.
I'll know what I'm getting into.
Yeah. You've already probably bought 3 on that street.
Right.
And it's the same shape. You're like, well, what's the worst case?
Yeah. So just to finish that strategy off, what I do is if they're like, how much, I just say, what's your email? And then like 10 minutes later, here's an offer. It expires tomorrow at 6:00. So oftentimes they're like, what the heck's going on here? So I have to put one more sentence in and be like, hey, I know this might be a bit random or, awkward, but I've bought many on this street. I know the square footage, just to kind of validate that I'm not, some guy just making an offer. But I don't put any conditions in. So
you just give them a firm offer.
Give them a firm offer. So that alone should be enough sort of validation for them. I've actually never made an offer with any conditions in my life.
Never.
Never.
Oh my God. That's pretty different for a lot of people.
It is. Yeah. So that strategy. I've probably bought a couple dozen properties just on that strategy.
To just, you start the conversation and there's the second communication is an offer.
Is an offer.
Yeah.
Or it could be Kijiji. Or it could be any site that has these targeted ads for the kind of product that I'm looking for.
And just to continue on with that, how often are you getting like a response that's, hey, okay, let's talk about a serious price, or are they saying, okay, that looks fair? And is your strategy to hit them with a low ball, or do you have a creative value add strategy that you are aiming to do that allows you to pay full market for their property?
That is a very astute question, Andrew, because I would say starting out, a lot of investors are so focused on just paying the lowest dollar, right? But in my opinion, you should always be learning how to create the most value so that you can almost pay the most out of any investor. And that might sound counterintuitive, but if you can be the person that is willing to pay the most and still make money on that property, you're going to be at a huge disadvantage. You're just going to have a bigger appetite, right? A bigger range of properties that you can buy. So to answer your question, now I don't hit them with a lowball offer. In fact, I hit them with a very reasonable offer.
Like, is it like 95% of what they might list for?
Maybe even 100, and they don't even pay the commission. So I'm like, here's a firm offer, 0 conditions, large deposit, no commissions. It's like, if they've even been considering selling in their mind in the next 6 months to a year, it's a great option.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't really lowball. Like I said earlier, I don't really like that strategy. You can waste a lot of time and energy just putting out mailers and just talking on the phone. And it's like, I'd rather learn how to like build an addition or build a secondary unit or add value to the property where I don't have to be wasting time, lowballing and bird feeding.
Yeah, I guess this is the the counterpoint to that, and the challenge is the value add strategy is a little time intensive. Adding an addition, doing that kind of thing, adding a unit, and it's expensive. Totally. And I think you and I have both tried to automate as much of our business as we can, hire people to manage the day to day, but they obviously have a price too.
Of course.
And it does get a little challenging. So can you give me an example like of a deal where you paid full market or maybe even a touch more, and like what did you buy it for?
Yeah.
What did you have into it, and what was it worth when you were done?
Well, we're working on a project right now where it'll be a flip, so a sale, a buy and sell. And I paid $315 for the house. It was brought to me by another realtor off the market, and it's in an area in London where you're going to know the exact area I'm talking about. There's 4 or 5 streets. They've basically all been flipped in that area.
Okay, yeah.
You know exactly what I'm talking about.
You don't want to give any other...
Oh, I can. It's,
like the Blackfriars.
Yeah.
Warncliffe,
it's on the
Oxford,
west side of Warncliffe, but nonetheless, basically 90% of the homes in that area have been flipped by either myself or a couple other players. And you've done a bunch in there as well.
Yeah, I own in there as well.
Yeah, and you own a couple really nice ones in there. So getting back to the deal, I bought it for $315. And this kind of speaks to my earlier point where, let's say there are investors out there, they may be pretty like astute investors. They may have 5, 6, 7, 8 properties. But what I bought here is a little 2-bedroom bungalow with 650 square feet for $315. So they would look at that deal if they haven't built an addition or added the type of significant value that I'm going to talk about here. And they would say, it doesn't meet my rule, or it doesn't meet my... Right. But that's such a limited mindset.
Yes.
I'm not saying they're doing anything wrong. If that's the path they want to take, great. But if they just focus on putting all their energy into hunting deals, right, and just getting below market deals, they're really going to be missing out on learning how to create value. So getting back to this example, we're doing a pretty sizable renovation. I mean, we're building an addition, we're renovating the interior. It'll be about just shy of, I want to say, $200,000.
So that'll be your
with
reno.
Soft and hard costs.
Okay. Including borrow cost?
Yeah.
Okay.
Everything. Okay. And if you go back to that same investor and it's like, hey, if you could buy this for $315 and then you could do a renovation for X, in this case 200, and you could sell it for like 700, would you do that? They'd be like, of course.
Well, yeah. If they knew, the variables I think scare them, right? The reno scares them. The idea of building an addition scares them, which I mean at one point scared both of us too.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
So anyways, that's the end value, approximately $700K, and it'll be, a decent little sale.
Okay. So purchase and reno on that one. Let's just total that up real quick. So about $515, and you're figuring your sale will be about $700,000 on it?
Yeah, maybe a net of around $675 after commissions are paid and whatnot.
Yeah, so you'll pay some commissions. And this is not something that you would list, correct?
It's not something I would list on MLS. Personally, I've developed exceptional relationships with realtors who basically have lineups for the type of product that I offer. And so this is the cool thing, which I always loved about this, is you're not really selling a property, you're selling a solution. What solution are you selling? So smart, Andrew. The solution that I'm selling is a lot of people use this term, turnkey, but the solution I'm selling is actual turnkey property. That's why I started my business. So renovated, rented, referred to property management company. So these are typically investors that aren't into real estate full time. They have careers, dentist, lawyer, doctor, who have some excess funds and would like to buy one or two investment properties. And for them, like many people out there, these folks just don't have the time.
Right.
They don't have the time to come in and deal with headaches. So they want something turnkey, newish, renovated. It's going to be competitive over time. So that's the solution.
Yeah. So get those major items, make sure it doesn't need a roof, windows,
absolutely,
anything like that. That's going, those are the major worries. I think other things people worry about, furnace.
Absolutely.
So those are the type of things we want to, we don't want to have, knob and tube. We want to have a properly wired house.
Yeah.
So this one, not to breeze past the fact that there's $160,000 of profit on the deal.
Yeah, it's not bad.
Yeah, that's okay. How many deals like that are you typically able to do in a year?
I could do at least 10, 12. But it's going to depend on the market. I'm not going to get into a deal and overpay just to take on a project. So I have pretty high standards when it comes to profit margins. But it's important that for any investor, if they are in this game or even the BRRRR strategy and hold, you sort of have to always evolve your expectations with the market. So for me, I've been probably averaging 5 to 8 per year over the past.
And that's flips, or that's including the ones you keep?
That's just flips.
Just flips.
So since 2013. And additionally, I've been adding, ones that I really like, perhaps, top locations or top homes. I'm just keeping in the portfolio and adding them in.
Yeah. How many keepers are you doing in a given year?
I like to target maybe 2 to 3, but it's just going to depend.
On what you can find.
Yeah, like right now I have a really nice 6-plex that I acquired last year. We're just finishing it up and getting it fully stabilized.
Yeah, I love this strategy of seeing the value that others don't always see. Like with the additions, with the, when you sell a solution at the end of the day and you understand that there are people out there that just want a property that just makes cash flow.
Oh, absolutely.
It makes cash flow. It doesn't require a lot of work.
Yeah, and that's a huge one.
Well, yeah, and especially when you're talking like student rentals are a business. Like this is not something that a person should ever buy one of and try and manage themselves.
No, I totally agree.
If you're getting into student rentals, I was just having a conversation with somebody about this the other day. It terrified me at first. I use property management, as you know.
Right.
Now I'm self-managing. But at first I was doing so much on the reno side and the acquisition side, I didn't feel like I had time to learn that.
Well, I'm glad you're self-managing. I mean, as you know, it's not a big deal.
It's not once you have the systems, right? Yeah. And I know you've helped me out with some of the emails and the systems that you do. Yeah. And that's been huge, right? So
yeah, happy to anytime.
Yeah, well, I got lots of brain picking to do. We won't have time to catch it all on the podcast. But okay, so you had some stuff. You did me the courtesy here of giving me some topics you thought would be good value adds for the podcast here. So you have an approach to learning, and it's not reading books about real estate investing.
So I think I would say that it depends where you are on the real estate investing scale. But if you are starting out, for me, it's always more important to learn by doing rather than theorizing or going to a course or investing in books. I'm not discounting that. Of course, get yourself to the point where you feel at least comfortable to make a move, but don't overdo it. I've heard people spending, 10 or 15,000 on courses. And they don't own a property. So I would rather them take 10 or 15,000 and throw it into a $200,000 starter bungalow or even a condo where just get your feet wet. Even if your worst case scenario happens and you lose, 1 or 2 months rent, or you don't do quite the optimal renovations, even if you lose $10,000, it's better than actually spending $10,000 on a course.
Yeah, in
my opinion.
Interesting perspective.
So you're gonna learn that, and just by virtue of going through that experience of buying that property, you will learn about getting a mortgage, getting your files organized. You'll learn how to pay your taxes, hydro, pay utilities. These things seem basic, but once you can get to the point where all of these like basic things are just on autopilot for you, you can focus on the next steps in your journey, in your growth. So I would say the further along you go down as a real estate investor, the less you should rely on learning by doing. What I mean by that is you shouldn't just jump into a gut renovation, right? If you haven't before. In my opinion, you should seek out someone who has been through that. Yeah. Maybe 2 or 3 people who have been through that. Offer them some value, right? Offer them something that you can give them value on, and also pick their brain. I've heard of investors like, this poor girl I was talking to, she got into this, gut.
Yeah.
And she's like, oh, it's going to be 40 or 50 grand. And she already bought it.
She gutted a house and thought it would be 40 or 50 grand.
It's actually 2 units.
Oh man.
And she already bought it at that point. I'm like, you're going to be 160,000, 180,000. She's like, what? Because she'd only ever done like lipstick and stuff like that. I'm like, this is pretty different. So getting back on track here, I would say as you graduate to more advanced levels and a mastery level, you really shouldn't be relying on learning by doing. You should talk to other people and really gain that experience so that when you do get into a gut renovation or an addition, you almost feel like you've been through that before because you have that network that you've built up and you're able to rely on them.
Yeah, in other words, learning from other people's mistakes, even if it's not in a book, you're learning by meeting real people, and which we're going to do after this when we go to the event. So I know that this is going to air on a different date, but we've got the Greater Hamilton REI meetup.
I'm excited for that too, Andrew.
Yeah, it's gonna be a good time. So yeah, I appreciate you sharing that. I got a couple more that I'm going to ask you.
Sure.
How should people grow their network?
That's a really good question as well. I think for me personally, I've always had a bit of a unique approach to that. And I've always consciously tried to give more value to people, at least at the beginning, than receiving. And what I mean by that is so often you have people at these networking events or anything, and it seems a little bit forced. Like it seems like they're going there to try and learn something themselves or to just to receive value. Yeah. So in my opinion, if you don't always have like at least a fair exchange of value, and ideally you want to be the person providing more value, then that relationship the other person's not going to feel like they're getting a good deal.
Right.
So when you're trying to build your network up, don't ever feel intimidated to reach out to someone that you may perceive as more successful or whatnot, and figure out how you can offer them value. So you may know a flipper or someone that likes to do wholesaling. You may reach out and say, look, could we go for coffee for 10 or 15 minutes? I'm really starting to dive into hunting for deals, and it looks like I'm going to have more than I know what to do with. And I wanted to meet you to see if there was a chance for me to give you some deals in the future. And as well, I want to ask you some questions on your business and how you've gotten to the point where you are. Most people are going to be like, yeah, of course, I'll take 15 minutes with you. That's just one example. But always try and give more value than you're taking. Like, yeah, it may be hard for people starting out because they may feel intimidated. So another good example is if you're dealing with a private lender, you may be really intimidated by that, just to speak to a private lender.
Right.
Like, of course, there are a minority of people that come from financial backgrounds or just dealing with wealthy people that are going to feel more comfortable. But for the majority of us real estate investors that we're starting out, we are going to feel quite intimidated by speaking to someone who just has millions of dollars at their disposal. But one sort of mindset that I've always used is just by the fact of them talking to you, you have some implied value. Like you can provide them a yield. It's very simple.
Yeah.
So just know that in itself is essentially that's good enough for you to have a conversation with them.
Yeah, and I think it's an important point you're bringing up. Like, you have to be adding value. I think there are a lot of people, like you said, that are out there with their hand out. Like a lot of younger people who are just getting started that don't get like that they can still add value. So it's not an excuse just because you're getting started to not try and find a way. Sometimes you might just have to make that value with hard work. Right?
Yeah, you bring up a good point. Be more creative in how you add the value.
Yeah. I have people that have reached out to me that do various tasks for me in exchange for like mentorship, which I think is a super awesome opportunity for both sides.
Totally.
As long as there's commitment there. It doesn't work if you're kind of ho-hum about it. You got to be there and meaning to be there. But yeah, there's so many opportunities for people to do that out there. And I think there can't really be a better way to learn. Like I just think about how much I've learned from you and, how many problems I've tried to solve and how many problems we've solved together.
Oh, absolutely.
That's the kind of relationship. I wish I had 10 of those relationships because it's,
Ditto, yeah.
you can just keep multiplying your wealth that way.
Oh, absolutely. You know that as your network expands, you're just going to have that many more people that are experts in all fields.
Right.
And you're not going to be afraid to provide that value up front. So these people, when you do need something,
Yeah.
that's a powerful position for you to be in. You're not going to abuse that power. Be respectful and don't waste people's time ever. But if you really do need something, they're going to want to help you because you've always been the one to give them that value. And a good example with you and I is just a few summers ago, I was in a cash crunch and I needed some private funds on a deal like right away. And you were most helpful and Jordan was beyond helpful.
Yeah.
And we got a deal funded in like 8 days.
Yeah. Shout out to Pro Funds. I guess we should give them credit.
Yeah. Carmen and Profile. I mean, they were incredible.
Yeah, absolutely. So I remember that. So we've that's the key, right? Like we if I have a private lender that I work with and it's working, I'm telling you about it.
Absolutely.
You have multiple lender contacts that you worked with or you knew people were using and you hooked me up and
totally.
That's the real benefit of kind of having those relationships. So yeah, I appreciate you sharing that. So you talked about creating value in properties, but you didn't get into the specifics. I know we did just sort of do a case study on your numbers there. What are some of the things that add value when we're trying to solve an investor's problem? They want a turnkey property. So what are some of the things you do to add value?
Mm-hmm. So like novice investors can really focus a lot of their time on, like I said, hunting for really below market deals and then just, doing a BRRRR, which there's nothing wrong with that. But like I mentioned, you can have an investor with like 6, 7, 8 properties, very intelligent investor and, on the right track, but he may not even know how to do a little one room addition. So therefore, when he sees a property that could actually be extremely profitable, he's just going to shy away from that. Okay. So I would say always try and be learning in the areas that you don't feel the most confident in. Okay. Always try and be learning how to add that value, whether it be in addition. Everyone has different skill sets. So just understand, don't close your mind off to an opportunity just because you haven't done it before. Look around, like look at the world, look at real estate, look at all the additions being built. People are putting up 20 stories. Yep. Like you don't want to spend your time hunting for deals, that are 200K and just do that a million times. Like learn and grow.
I think part of that comes back to like, who are you modeling? Like, who are you?
Absolutely.
Who did you look up to, and what success did they have? Then you said, I wanted that. And if they did something that's so drastically different than your approach, then maybe that's time to reflect.
Absolutely.
But yeah, just to clarify, so Carlo's talking about building actually physically adding square footage to a house in the backyard, probably.
Oh yeah.
Sometimes maybe topping a house if you had the opportunity. I don't know if have you done one of those?
I haven't done that before. I have lower basements.
Lower basements, okay.
Another really good one is, most municipalities in Ontario now have a bylaw where you can just add a whole unit to a property. Either if it's a bungalow, let's say, you can do it in the basement. Or you can build a whole additional unit on the back, providing you only go to a certain cap of bedrooms. In London, it's 5. Other municipalities may be different. Yep. But again, like learn how to do that. That may be a huge opportunity for investors that their mind is closed off to. Right. Like look around you. If you're in this, if you really want to be financially independent, learn, like evolve.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think we were both doing one at the same time, adding one in the backyard there. Have you done more of those?
Yeah, I've done a total of 2.
2 of those. Okay. Yeah. I know we were talking about the numbers on those. They're a little harder to make them work because it's more expensive when you're adding an extra kitchen and, doing all the things to separate a unit, right? You have separate furnace, all that stuff. And it can definitely add up.
And I was like, you know what? My mentality, it's like, whatever, it's 20, 30K more, but what you've learned, you've been through that. it's a massive win.
Well, and I'm happy I kept that property, and you kind of encouraged that. It's probably one of the coolest properties I own.
Yeah, I bet you like just wait 6 more months. You only did it 6 months ago or so.
Yeah, I think I finished it. Yeah, about 8 months ago, six, eight months ago.
Additional 6 months. Yeah. So that's only a total of 1 year. It'll be worth $100,000 more than what you actually were planning on selling it for.
Yeah. So yeah, and I've said this so many times. Like I think every time I sold something, I look at it, I'm like, it would be worth now $100,000 more than I sold it for, and that's like
absolutely.
2 years later.
Yeah.
So selling properties usually comes with regret to some degree. I mean, sometimes you do it because that's part of your income strategy.
Yeah.
And to clarify, so for you, your income strategy is mostly surrounded with your buying and selling rather than being a realtor. Realtor is more of a tool.
Yeah, I don't really take on any clients as a realtor. I'm not out there showing homes. I have pre-existing relationships with some investors like you or a few other ones. Mm-hmm. But yeah, my time is spent on my flipping business, which is more active, and as well on managing the existing portfolio and renting it. I do all my own renting, and adding to it and acquiring more. Yeah. So that's what I'm passionate about.
Do you have a goal, like a goal that you're targeting for? I know it's not cash flow. We talked about cash flow.
Yeah.
That's part of it, but I think you've already kind of hit most of your cash flow goals.
Yeah, you know what? I don't have like I said earlier, I don't have a monetary goal per se. I really enjoy, I really love to put my vision on a property and see it from point A to B, mm-hmm. and just know that you're in that leadership role, you're delegating, and at the end of it, you've built that to either keep or sell. But it's really cool when you keep them and you look back, mm-hmm. you've built that sort of empire. And I like to put that vision on it and see it completed. And all the while you're, essentially giving people work, which is honorable.
Yeah.
And you're giving tenants a really amazing home, which is honorable. There's honor in that. And at the same time, there's freedom. You come out of that tunnel when you've done all this, and at the end, there's that freedom. So for me, that's the goal is the freedom. There's no financial goal.
Okay. But you're already there as far as freedom.
You could just stop. I knew you were going to say that. They're so predictable, Andrew.
Yeah. It seems like you have fun with what you do.
Oh, absolutely.
Which it is fun. I think back to some of those renos, the ones I kept, the ones I sold, it was a great time. It was a lot of work coordinating all of it, but it is fun. And I like the creative part. I think you do too. You've always, kind of gussied things up and done them different ways. And you were, I think you always took a lot of pride in posting those photos on off-campus housing when you're trying to get tenants, and your photos just blow away everybody else's. And, you get the students all bragging. They're like, "Oh, my place is nicer than
right." They
than
take
everyone
pride
else.
in it, so it's great to know that you actually your vision created all of this, created the hype with them, giving people work, the whole 9 yards. So to me, that's really a passionate part about it.
Yeah, they get into it too. I know some of my tenants, they really want to hear the story of what
had girls,
what the place was like.
Because at this point, tenants, they just sort of feel the call it confidence or power emanating from me when I show them a house. Based on the other examples, they just feel it. So I've shown, for instance, tenants homes that were untouched, but there's a floor plan, mm-hmm. right? And I've shown them other examples. So I've had situations where these girls, these students, have come into homes when they're about to move in and just cried. They're so excited, they just cry. They're like, "Oh my God, it wasn't," and they're literally crying. It's pretty incredible. You're creating that, right?
I've never had that. That's good.
Yeah.
That's a great point. I learned that from you. Advertising a property before it's done for rent, taking people through while it's under renovation. That's a really effective way because they know, wow, this guy's serious. You know, he's renovating. There's only one way it can go. They're gonna finish the property. And make it done.
There's a fine line, especially if it's students. Sometimes they don't really have that vision.
Okay.
So as you know, right?
So you show them maybe one of your other houses that's already done.
Correct. Yeah. Right. If you take them in and it's totally under renovation and, the concrete in the basement is busted out and they see dirt, it's in their mind, they might think, what the heck's going on here? They've never seen that. Right. So,
right.
So you just have to go with your gut and do what you think is going to be best and be strong in your approach and be confident. Right.
Yeah. You never seem to have any problem with that. Oh, that's cool, man. Hey, if people would like to learn more about you, maybe connect with you in some way, is there a way that we can have them do that?
As you know, I basically have no social media. I've been so just focused on business. But yeah, just email is fine.
So email is fine. You want me to put that in the show notes?
Yeah, that'd be fine. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I'll share your email if people want to connect with you that way.
Perfect.
And then just kind of getting to know a little bit about you when you're not working. Favorite hobbies to do?
I used to play a lot of poker.
A lot of poker?
Yeah, as you know, I just found it to be just thrilling, the competitive aspect for money. And it also just got some down payments.
Yeah, it was some pretty profitable poker.
Yeah. These days, I don't play it too much. But like I said, I like to stay fit, hang out with friends, and just do what I want. Like, live life, whatever I want to do.
Every day is wide open as far as if you don't want to work, you don't have to.
Correct.
But you're going to obviously have a certain amount of work you're going to get done in one week probably.
And like a big motivation for me is like, one day when I do decide to have a family, like that's huge to have that freedom, right? Because I never had that growing up, right? So to have that and to be able to provide that, that's always been a huge motivator for me.
Okay.
So that's cool as well. So
kind of looking at what you didn't have with your parents and your situation, and then you want to be able to give that.
Oh, absolutely. And that's extremely fulfilling.
That's a big motivator for me too. Just knowing what my parents kind of struggled with, and they never were real estate investors, and I don't think your parents were either.
No.
And it just made me see that, and something clicked somewhere along the way in business school that real estate was going to be the way. And it's funny how a lot of people who want the independence, that's where they end up. Hey guys, I just wanted to pause from the episode for 1 second and introduce this upcoming section. Carlo had a couple of specific topics he wanted to cover before we started shooting the episode. And right now he's going to take a moment and just talk about leverage.
I had just bought my house. So I got out of my grandpa's basement. This was like 2010. And I'm like, Hines, like I put this HELOC on it, like home equity line of credit. I'm like, you got to do the same thing. I'm like, I bought it for $230 and they gave me a loan for like $280. So I not only got my down payment back, but I got an additional $40,000, and it's huge. So that's just one thing. I know we're wrapping up, but just leverage.
Yeah.
If you can use leverage to your advantage and do all the other things we talked about, like create value.
Oh yeah.
It's going to be a no-brainer for you to take that leverage and just go ahead and create value in real estate.
Yeah, you can just keep recycling the money, right? That's the key, is if you got to be able to add that value, enough value that an appraiser is going to agree with you. You're going to be able to pull that money back out, and then your portfolio grows infinitely. You never have to stop. But if you're not finding creative ways to create enough value to pull your money back out, then eventually you hit a wall.
Yeah, which is why you have to keep learning.
Got to keep learning, got to keep getting creative. Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree more.
And watch Andrew. You're a huge value add.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate
this
that.
Show, I mean, your Instagram, like huge, like especially for people starting out in all levels. Mm-hmm. But and you're always an open book. You're a really good example of what I talked about with the networking, is just always try and give that value. I've always sensed that with you and seen you interact with anyone. Like you're a really good example of that.
Pause again, folks. In this section, Carlo talks about his personal development routine and what he recommends in order to be able to talk to contractors, lenders, and tenants in a more productive way. Carlo has a very specific way of dealing with people in his business, and you're going to get a really good idea of his personality and the way he likes to conduct himself in these upcoming tips.
In this business, you always have to come from a place of self-assuredness and confidence. Mm-hmm. Doesn't matter who you're dealing with, whether it be a private lender or a tenant or a contractor. So here, I'll just give you a quick example. If you're dealing with a tenant, you're showing a prospective tenant a property and they see some like marks on the wall. And, the girl says, what are those marks on the wall? Like, are those going to be fixed or something like that? Let's say the other tenant, the existing tenant is home. Could be like, hey, Samantha, why are you putting all these marks on my wall? What are you doing, running around here with a scraper? And then you'd look back to the prospective tenant and be like, just joking. Samantha's okay. I always get this cleaned up before you move in, if I even accept you. There are a lot of applicants for this property. Yeah. Versus, like, let's say a contrasting example. Someone starting out who just isn't coming from that place. They may get down on their knees, like near the wall, and be like, oh, like, I'm so sorry. Like, I'll try and find a painter. It should be done before you move in. It's like they can sense that. right? They can sense that uncertainty and lack of self-assuredness within you.
Yeah.
So why would they even want to deal with you? Same with a private lender. If they're like, how long do you need the money for? You're like, what? Maybe 6-8 months, or what LTV do you need? And you're like, oh, what's an LTV? Versus 6 months, 75% loan to value.
Yeah. Being direct and concise.
So just to get back to your question, I would say do whatever you need to do as a person, whether it be, personal development with videos, books, again, not overdoing it.
Practicing in front of a mirror, maybe.
Whatever you need to do. I mean, you're actually a really good example. I've seen you improve drastically in this area. And I think I mentioned that to you before, just based on how you deal with people. And like I said, some people are just going to have that more innately than others, but do whatever you need to do to get to that point of always interacting in that self-assured manner. Just knowing that really nothing is an issue. You deal with it, move forward.
Yeah, you speak with confidence, you know what you're trying to get at, and if you make a mistake, you make a mistake, but don't plan on that.
Exactly.
Yeah, plan on being successful and coming across the way you want to come across.
Yeah.
I think it comes with time though. Like for some people, right? Some people it's just there, which I think for you it was more of that. Whereas for me, like I got more like that the more I understood.
Which is amazing.
The more research I did,
you did it at a conscious level, which is also incredible, and that's even more impressive. For instance, even on the way here, like I have a sale that was supposed to close yesterday, but this is just a personal example. Over this past weekend in London, we had severe rain, very inordinate amounts of rain, and the basement had considerable amount of water in it. In fact, this property, we're not going to say the name, but it had a considerable amount of water come in.
Oh, okay.
So literally like a day or two before closing, and the deal's already firm. It's like, do I want this to happen? No, of course I don't want it to happen. But once it's happened, once it's already occurred, it's like, whatever, it's done. Deal with it, move forward. I actually almost enjoy being in that situation, knowing that I have that just strength and whatever, confidence to push through.
You can handle it, right?
It's just really no issue. So just on the way here, 30-minute conversation, handled.
Yeah.
Lawyer, the other region, it's done. It's handled. They're closing tomorrow. Done.
You're taking care of whatever you need to take care of.
Yeah, we worked out a solution.
Yeah. That's awesome. And I think that comes for some people, that's going to come with again, time. For other people, that's going to be more of a position, right? Like,
of course.
For me, I find something that helps me have that attitude is to have a good buffer of cash available for my properties.
Oh, 100%.
Like when things happen, you don't want to be like, oh God, where am I going to find the money to handle it? You want to be like, this is part of the business. I knew that. I'm in this business. Good. Where do I sign?
That is a huge part of it. Like cash is just energy.
Yeah.
You have a pent up amount of energy in your account that realistically any problem with real estate can be solved with a check.
Yeah. And the answer to how much cash to have is really a personal question. Yeah. How much does it take for you to be able to sleep at night? And to know that no matter what happens, you get called for a new roof. I got quoted, I don't know if it told you this, $15,000 for my roof on my Talbot Street property.
That's too much.
Because they have to resheet it. And it's 2.5 stories up. And it's steep.
Still.
It is too much. No, that was just one quote I got.
9 to 11 is the market.
Right. So this is why we have these conversations. But, to know that somebody might tell you need $15K out of nowhere, wasn't expecting it. I don't want to pay that, but I know I can. So that's the key thing, I think, for investors.
But just look at what you just said. Like, even 5-6 years ago, your mentality would have been so different. Yeah. Like, you've gotten to this point, and I think that's important for these people listening. Is like, you can get to that point too. Yeah. You just have to, like I said, read books or watch videos, or get yourself to that point where you have enough cash. Yeah. Go through the journey of having that experience. Knowing that whatever pops up, you just deal with it, you move forward, and you become stronger.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say the way that the cash is built up for pretty well all across my portfolio was from that property's cash flow, just letting it grow. Yeah. And that's why I say cash flow is important. I think you believe that too, right? You're not going to buy properties that don't cash flow.
No, absolutely not.
Awesome. Okay. Well, Carlo, we could obviously go on forever, which, we won't do, but we'll probably get you back here at some point and we'll have another conversation. Be glad. Let's go do some networking.
Let's do it.
Anyways, thanks a lot, man.
Yeah, thanks, Andrew.
Thanks for watching today's episode. Just a friendly reminder to please rate and review this podcast on iTunes. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure that you smash the like and subscribe and notification bell. And also leave a comment. And hey, while you're at it, why not share this episode with somebody you think it could help? It helps this podcast grow, and I would really appreciate it. Thanks again. We'll see you on the next episode.